just checking this is on. So, I'm Nick, I'm a modeller, and this is a video about airbrushes from my mate Stratos. So, just to sort of like talk about what I'm going to go through, we're going to talk about different types of airbrushes you can get, different sources of air, and then we'll have a go at filling in some paint and doing a bit of spraying, try different techniques out. So, I guess first things first, so the two main types of airbrush you get is your traditional sort of spray gun, very cheap airbrush. You can pick them up for about less than £10 in the UK, and these are pretty simple. They're pretty good for doing wide fields of painting, so if you're doing a big job, a lot of spray work, pretty good for that. Not so good for doing detailed work, very fine lines, pre-shading or post-shading or any sort of special technique. So, but if you're just getting used to using an airbrush and thinning paint and how to balance out the air and the paint thickness and stuff like that, they're not a bad start, you know, just to get used to things. So the main principle is you've got thin paint that you put in a jar, you've got like a siphon tube that pulls the paint up, the air flows over the top of the head, that sucks the paint up, and then depending on how much adjustment you put into this this valve there, changes your spray pattern and how big your spray pattern is, and then you've got a trigger on there, so you'd have your air coming in from your compressor, and you control your air through that trigger. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but not necessarily that good for doing fine work with. So next sort of airbrush we've got really is the ones that more commonly are used for this sort of modelling, and in this case we've got air coming up for the bottom of the airbrush. You've got a trigger, and then going through the centre of the airbrush you've got a needle. So here's one I've got stripped down, so your needle passes through, and what your trigger does is two things. So it controls both the amount of air that's coming through the airbrush by how much you press down, and also your paint flow by how much you push back. So when you're working, it's all to do with the coordination of your index finger between how much airflow you put in and how much paint you're getting in, as to what sort of spray pattern you're putting onto the model. In basic terms, you've got a head, like a tip that goes on the end of the airbrush, like that, and as you're moving that needle, you've got a needle that's going through into that head, and it's that movement of that really fine tip through that head there that's governing your paint. And then going through there you've got like an air path which sucks the paint through on the needle. So most of the airbrushes of that design are fairly similar. You've got Iwatas, Badgers, various other makes. It tends to be down to the model as to which one's the favourite. I've used Badgers, I've used Iwatas, prefer Iwatas at the moment, but I know other people prefer Aztecs and these sorts of things. Main difference I suppose between the Badger and the Iwata is, on the Badger you've got this white ring that goes around the bottom of the head, and I found from experience that if you clean the airbrush and take the head off a lot, you've got to change that white ring, or else you start getting bubbles in your paint cup. So if anyone's got that problem with a Badger, change that nylon ring and you'll find it should go away. So that's airbrushes in simple terms. So if we move on to sources of air, so when you're starting off, one way of getting air is through a propellant can, which is like sometimes we nickname them a bomb. Can be quite expensive. It depends how much spraying you do. Haven't got that much control over it, and they can be gone in quite a short time. So they can be an expensive way of getting into airbrushing. It wouldn't be the route that I'd really recommend. The other way you can do it, if you're just starting out, and if you're on a limited budget for example, a lot of airbrushes come with like a valve like this, which is actually designed to go on top of one of those. But Badgers sell an insert, like a ring that goes around inside that ring there, and that means you can put it onto a tyre, a valve off a tyre of a car, spare tyre or spare wheel. So that's a means of getting cheap air instead of having to buy those. And if you're just getting used to it and having a play, well, you don't intend to do much spraying, and that's not a bad way of doing things really. I think it's just a couple of pounds for one of them. You just got to find yourself a tyre from somewhere and just keep blowing your tyre up as you use the air, you know. So that's not too bad. Now if you're looking at spending a bit more money and doing much more spraying, I guess there's two different types of airbrush that you're typically going to, airbrush compressor that you're typically going to come across. So you've got the old traditional sort of silent compressor, which has got a big air tank on it, like this one here, which is what I tend to use. So it's that device here, that's a silent compressor, and this big ring here is actually the air tank. So there's a drain valve where you have to take the water out every now and then for condensation. There's a moisture trap there, it's quite important. You find if you do a lot of spraying, it can get moisture collecting in the airline, and it can wreck your paint. So it's a good idea, whatever you do, try and get something that's got a moisture trap on it. so it stops the moisture getting into this airline here, which goes to airbrush first, splatter through in your paint whilst it's spraying. The valve on the top there also governs the pressure. This airbrush here has actually got another valve on it there, so that allows me to do local control of the air and stuff and to go back to compressor all the time. So depending on what sort of job I'm doing, I can just rotate that little needle there, and that gives me nice precise control over my air. So that's a silent compressor, so it's basically got like a fridge pump on it, and you'll hear it now. It's like if I run some air out, you'll hear it kick in a minute. There's a big relay on it, so it's got like a pressure switch, and as soon as the reservoir is drained enough, the relay will kick in. Any minute now. There we go, and that's it running. So it's pretty quiet, pretty quiet. They're very heavy. They tend to be oil filled as well, and they can be quite expensive, but you can get them cheap as well. So this one I've got here has lasted me about 10 years, fingers crossed. The other type of compressor that you can get more regularly now are these, like this water compressor that we've got here, and this is like on demand air. So instead of having like an air tank, it's got like a pressure switch in it. So it is, if we switch this on, so that's putting air in there. So as soon as I get a demand for the air, it'll kick in and just top it up on demand. So what you have to do is just use this valve there to govern your air pressure. You're typically working about 20 psi or a bit less. It's not a big amount of air, but you'll get it running and adjust the pressure whilst you've got the airbrush spraying, so you get it to the right sort of air pressure that you want for the work you're doing. So that's like an on-demand type one. They tend to be a bit lighter. They're not as heavy to move around. Slightly more noisy, but you know, not terribly noisy, all things considered. So it depends what you want. They're normally about, I think about 200, but you can get them for less as well. They will do some as well as Iwata. Okay, so going back to spraying, so let's have a quick talk about airbrushes and stuff. What I recommend is if you do get one, get to know it, take it apart, understand how to clean it. That's the important thing with the cleaning. Understand how it all fits together as well is very important, so you're not ever stuck with a situation where you can't actually service it or maintain it. In terms of cleaning, you can get lots of different sort of cleaning materials. I tend to use this sort of stuff quite a lot, which is quite potent, but seems to clean virtually anything out of the airbrush. What I tend to do between coats, I'll show you, just tend to bubble some water or some cleaner through, then use at the end of the job as it clears pretty much everything out. So in terms of paint, there's quite a few different brands of paints on the market. Like for example, you've got Tamiya, Vallejo, Life Colour, Guns, and then of course your good old Humble enamels as well. So these tend to be like, that's your traditional enamel, which is like an oil based paint, so you tend to fill that out with a solvent like white spirit or enamel thinners. These two are acrylic. They tend to be sort of water based acrylic, so they're quite nice to work with. They dry very quickly. They're not necessarily that robust, and you tend to find you don't really want something you've got to handle a lot, and also it's really good to prime the model first with either something like a fine surface primer, or what I use quite a lot is just Halford's automotive stuff. So it gives this paint something to grip to. The other sort of acrylics you can get are Tamiya and Guns, but these tend to be alcohol based acrylics, so they're a bit more smelly, but again they dry really quick. They're really nice to work with. Myself, I think I prefer to work with these two when I'm airbrushing. Tamiya airbrush is really nice in my opinion. This is actually a pre-thinned paint that's airbrush ready from Vallejo, and that goes on nice, but I tend to find it's a bit heavy. The Life Colour is good, and also the Guns is good. These actually are in a gloss finish, so they're quite nice for aircraft, so you have to put a gloss coat on after you've done it. So I guess if we take a bit of Tamiya paint, so what I tend to do is I use like cake tins from a supermarket to mix my paint in, and then I have a little paintbrush. Get the paint, give it a good shake. And we've got faithful old screwdriver, give it a good mix. And then what I tend to do is we'll get some thinners. So with the Tamiya thinners, generally you've got to use the Tamiya paint, you've got to use the Tamiya thinners. You can use isopropyl alcohol in the water mix, but I tend to find the Tamiya thinners are easier to work with. So all I do is to say, I tend to mix by eye, so there's no sort of exact ratio for it. But yeah, so mix a bit of paint with a bit of thinners, and you just sort of like try and get it to the right consistency. So a lot of my friends say that they're roughly about happy with the thickness of it when the paint starts to just drip off the brush. You need to thin it so that it get the right sort of particles for actually spraying. So that's roughly about ready. So a bit more and it'll start, maybe just a little drop more there. So it all depends really on what sort of work you're doing, what sort of paint you're working with. You tend to find from a bit of experience how much you got to thin it down. So so just to avoid having any catastrophes, I always tend to put the lids back on again. So then just all we've got to do is just pour that into the cup of the airbrush. There we go. Now, important safety note, if you're doing a lot of spraying, what I recommend is get yourself a good mask. You don't want to ruin your lungs with this stuff. It's not pleasant to sit in. Also, as well as that, you don't really want to do it around your kids or around your family. So if you're spraying the house, make sure you've got lots of ventilation. Do it whilst there's not a lot of people around. Try and make sure you've always got a mask on and change it regularly as well, just to keep yourself safe. Some of it can be quite strong. I always have, as much as possible, like my window open in my workshop, so I get lots of nice air, save getting lungs full of crap. So, got our paint. Paint's in the cup there. So here we go. You can just so what we're going to do is press down the trigger. That'll get me some air. So I'm pressing down there and then pull back, and off we go. See? So you can go, if I push down and get a smaller amount of air and just gently pull back, I can do quite fine lines. Yeah. So you sort of do the combination of how much you press down, how much air you want, and how much you pull back. Obviously, if you put it in too much, put all the air in, and pull it back, you get that effect. It's a bit like welding. It's a combination of speed and how much power you're putting into it. So what you tend to want to do when you're spraying, start off the model, pull the trigger back, get the paint going, go across and lift off again off the model, so you don't get that splatter there appearing on your paintwork, and then you can work in various different patterns and things like that. So that's all we're doing, just work it across, put it on off the model, go across, get it in, take it off again. So yeah, it all depends what sort of work you're doing as to how much air you need and how thin you want to paint, and also depends on what sort of paint you're using as well. So we'll just get rid of all that. Okay, so now we've got to clean the airbrush out. So as you can see, we've got paint in there. What I tend to do is you can get your thinners, for example, and then get your paintbrush in, put some thinners in the cup, give it a bit of a whiz around with your brush, and then what I tend to use is get some cotton buds, stick the cotton bud in the end of the airbrush, make sure you're not looking down inside the cup or looking, you know, it's going to splatter. Then put a bit of air in, nice and gentle, and you'll feel it just bubbling, so you're blowing the paint back away from the head again, so back flushing it. Then what you can do is, save having to blow that out into your workshop, just pour it into a little cup or tub of something, just to get rid of it, and then maybe get a bit of tissue, wipe the cup out, and then after that it's just working out what else you want to do. So it might be that you just want to just put a bit more water or something in. You can get these spray cups here, which are quite useful, because then you can just spray any excess in instead of spraying it into your shed or having to spray it outside. Just empty it when you've finished it. So yeah, and then, you know, that's pretty much it. You know, I can go and do my next coat now. I can carry on with the next job. If it's the end of the day and I've finished doing everything I want to do, generally what I'll do is use some of this. So just spray it in. Again, try not to get it anywhere near your eyes, because it's going to splatter back out again. Get your cotton bud again, stick it in the end, give it a good bubble, that's going to blow it back. Get that round there. Again, you can empty some of that into your little tub, and then just spray it off. And what you probably want to do as well is take your needle out, because what you tend to find is you'll have an accumulation of paint going up that needle, and all we do there is just give it a bit of a wipe, try and get it as clean as you can, and then back in we go. There we are, done, overnight. You can also get cleaners that foam, like this one for example. Give it a shake, put it in. That's that's a foaming cleaner, that is, as you can see, it foams up inside. That's pretty good. And then you just flush it through with water after that when you finish with it. Sometimes what you need to do is you can sometimes find that the needle gets quite sticky inside the airbrush, and some manufacturers like Iwata uses like a special lubricant which doesn't affect your paint. So all you do then is again, get a bit of tissue or something, put some of this in your tissue, and then just give it a wipe over, then just slide that back in the airbrush again, and you'll find it stops it from sticking. Other things you can get as well, you can get airbrush cleaning brushes. So these can be quite useful if you've got to get into certain bits of the brush. Say for example, if you've got to get in there, or say if you've got to take this out to clean in there. Say for example, you can take that with the airbrush out and you can slide it up inside the body, because you sometimes get that paint tracks back up inside the body and makes things a bit sticky. So these are quite useful for that. Also useful getting in the paint cup as well, and you can pick them up online. So there we go. So that's a quick intro into airbrushes and compressors and paints and cleaning them and spraying them. And next time we'll have a go at doing some actual painting and some techniques and other different bits and pieces. Cheerio!